Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, a show where every week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and review it based on just the knowledge we obtained from that episode alone. At the end of each show, we decide that based on just the knowledge of the pilot, if this is a show that we want to greenlight or cancel. For this episode, we're talking about That 70s Show. That 70s Show went 8 seasons on Fox, 200 episodes. First episode that we're talking about today is called That 70s Pilot. That 70s Pilot originally aired August 23rd, 1998. So to get things started, same old crew, I'm Jay Gags. With me as always, Joe, Nick, Gordo, and Ferg. How's it going, guys?
Heyo.
Heyo.
I'm old, so no trips out of town.
Bob's head looks like a poodle's ass.
With that, I do want to say just a quick disclaimer for everybody. We understand what's going on with a cast member from this show. Obviously, we know that's a huge deal, and of course, we don't condone it. We had this in the plans to do, and we want to cover it without thinking of that, so we're just going to sort of go on with the show, and, we just want to address the fact that we're not going to bring up him by name or anything like that. So, going forward, here we go.
All right, so for That 70s Show, pretty iconic show, but due to Gordo most weeks, I think I need to always ask, have you guys seen this show?
Yes.
Of course,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh yeah, start to finish.
Okay, so this show starts off with just like a small black title screen that just tells you where the show takes place. So it's in Point Place, Wisconsin, May 1976. That's the setting of the show.
Oh, so I had a thought of that actually. Do you guys find it weird that it starts in 1976? I mean, it's that 70s show. They kind of cut themselves off, making it more than halfway through the 70s. Like, why not make it like 1970?
Well, I guess because they're in high school, though, if you were to guess they were freshmen, they'll be high school freshmen and then be out of high school by 1980. So
yeah.
maybe that's like the life of the show is these kids
So
in high school.
were they planning on 4 seasons? Like,
I don't know. I don't know if there's a long-term thought. And with a lot of shows too, like a season doesn't always have to be a year.
That's
So
true.
they could have worked around
So,
it.
you know what was interesting, too, I noticed about the date? Well, first of all, I did not realize this show started in 1998. I didn't think it was that old. I've seen the show a bunch of times. I did not think it was that old. Because you're
it feels
talking,
a little newer.
so consider something like, Friends, right? Which is an old show. There's only a 4-year difference between them from when they started. So if they were to make that show today, it would be about 1999 now. Because it was a 22-year difference, I think.
Yeah.
So if they were to make
crazy.
it would be 99 now.
That 90s show.
It's funny, I never
Yeah.
thought of that, but I don't know what it says about nostalgia, and I think I forget what it's called, but there's something about nostalgia where people think that a time you missed obviously is way more nostalgic than a time you lived through. To me,
Right. You know what? I'm glad you said that because I actually wrote something down that I was going to get into later, but it fits right with what you mentioned. Do we think we tend to talk in past episodes, like Nick, you just brought up Friends. We talked about how that show looks dated. And when you watch a show like this, which was made in the 90s, about the 70s.
Yeah, you don't get that vibe, do you?
It doesn't feel
because we didn't know what it was like.
And
It
that's the
lives in its
thing.
own
And I
time.
think if things look dated to us, it's because we have that nostalgia built in. And
It's a
there's,
super
like,
interesting point, yeah.
it takes us back to where we were at that time. So when you see things from the 70s, you're not like, that looks old, because you're just like, this was just a different world. But when you look at something from the 90s, you think about yourself in the 90s and the things you remember.
There is a key difference there. The Friends was in the 90s, based in the 90s. This
Authentic,
was in the late 90s, early 2000s, but based in the 70s. So they're trying to make it look dated. You know what I mean? That's
but
the
it doesn't
idea.
come off as dated. It looks like a timepiece, and it looks
Right. I don't.
We don't know, right? 'Cause we
period
didn't
piece
grow up in the
instead of
70s, but it
being-
looks accurate to us. But it
now
doesn't
on that
have that
note,
old
here's a
look.
question for everybody. If you found out tomorrow Hulu or whoever was making a new show called That 1999 Show, would you watch it? Because I wouldn't. I don't want to. There's nothing about that time that makes me feel crazy nostalgic.
Morbid
aside from-
curiosity, 100% I'd watch it.
by the way, why did you choose 99 and not that 90s show?
Because that's the year we were talking about.
I was going to say, though, they made that 80s show.
Which was a
And
bomb.
yeah,
Coming
I was
soon.
going to say it.
Well,
eventually
they
we'll
tried
discuss.
to.
We'll discuss.
But they
We'll
still
discuss
made
that
it.
show, and I'd love to do with that.
I would
80s
very
show
much
episode,
like to do that show.
because there's a
I'm
lot
sure
of
we'll
things.
get there.
There's a lot of things about that show I want to get into, and we'll save that because I do think that'll make for a good episode one week. down the line.
For sure. But I was just bringing up the position.
Yeah,
that,
I think
that
if they were to
did.
do a '90s show, right, just like what we said before about the way we translate, because everyone on this show was born in the middle of the '80s, right? So the '90s is something that we have memories of everything. If we watched that '90s show, or whatever Joe wanted to call it, it would be filled
That
with these-
1999 show. It's a better
that
title.
1999 show. It would be filled with like jokes that would seem forced to us, right? Because it'd be things that we would have casually said back then, but like that they went out of their way to sneak it in the writing.
Yeah.
Where with that 70s show, because it's not natural to us, you just like, yeah, it's just how they
Well,
talk.
I
that's the
can't
thing.
even
think-
imagine how bad that show would be. I don't want to go to school today. I don't feel well. Oh, just get down with the sickness. You'd be like, I gotta kill myself to watch any of this. I'm sorry.
I don't think that.
But Joe, I
would
mean,
be
like
in
you
the
are
show.
super jaded when it comes to that stuff for some reason. I don't know what that era did to you exactly, but like
It
you just
touched
don't
me.
like any pop culture. Period, really. So, but you're in the minority there. You understand that, right?
I love pop culture. There's a lot of stuff from the 90s I do love. It's just mainly not a lot of the popular music, whatever, but like a lot of the movies, the TV shows. I mean, this entire our podcast is about a lot of 90s TV shows that I love.
Show us your Fred Durst tattoo.
That would be a
I'm
not
going to come at you with a
suitable for work
motherfucking
show top shows.
chainsaw if you keep going with this.
So all right, so let's move on to the opening scene, right? So we start right in Eric's basement. Well, we're in a basement, and Eric, there's a party going on upstairs. You can hear the music from upstairs. So yeah, there's a few kids hanging downstairs, and basically their objective is for Eric to go upstairs to the party that his parents are apparently throwing and bring beer down to them. So at that point, we're assuming, all right, these kids are minors, and because it's 1976 and the drinking age was 18 at the time and not 21 as it is today, we're to assume that these kids are all in high school. So they're all, probably around 16, 17. That's what they should be for this show, right?
It's crazy to think, too, like, we all had those days, a mission for beer. Like, it's insane to
Yeah.
think of now, right? But
You know
had
what's funny to
entire
think
days.
about too for this show specifically is they pointed it out later. I was gonna try to figure it out, but they did point out that they were 17, right? They were
I think later
they're
on
less than
it
a
comes
year
up.
away from being able to drink at this point. So it's actually not that weird that they wanted.
No, but
You know?
at the same time, when we were 20, you know what I mean? It's still that, like, we
No,
go out
I
and
know.
we
I'm just
wanna
saying
drink,
it's a weird. That's probably why. I don't know. It's just weird to me that they were that close to drinking age. I thought
Right.
they were younger initially.
Yeah,
And
it's
to
just,
Nick's,
the
Nick's point,
times are
though,
different.
remember when you were 20, right? If you wanted to get drunk that night, how many people did you know you could call to go to the liquor store?
Yeah.
for
Right.
beer?
Yep.
Yeah.
Be a
Like,
little
that's
easier to
what seems
assume.
weird to me, is like these dudes are 17, they're all 17 or whatever. There's nobody they know who's a year older than them who just go to the store and buy
Well,
a
it's
case
probably
of
a
beer.
Yeah,
mix
but
of
that
things, though.
kind of they all came off as kind of outcasts and dorky to me. Like
But there are
they
also
didn't seem like
outcasts
the
and dorks who are
popular.
a year older than you.
Well, yeah, but the thing you got to remember, though, is it's not them being 17 a year away from being at the drinking age is still different than us being 20 a year away from the drinking age, because at 20 years old, you're out of high school. You're technically an adult
true,
as
too,
far
yeah.
as like what's going on in the world. So you're around more adults. You're in your job. You know what I mean? Like things are a little different for you where they're still in high school. So
Yeah, but just as an example, right? So did anybody here ever buy anybody a little younger than them cigarettes when they were in high school when they were 18?
is that something? Do we want to
Yeah.
admit that on here? Let's just
No, of
say
course not.
maybe.
I've never committed any crime.
Let's-
ever.
I'm not saying I ever did either. Statute of limitations notwithstanding. But you know what I mean? If you were, that's the same age as what I'm saying, right? If you were 17 to 18,
Yep.
if somebody you were friends with when you were 18 who was 17 couldn't legally buy cigarettes and asked you to buy it for them,
I had plenty
like you
of
guys
people-
did with me.
chances are, So that
Yeah.
seems a
No,
little
I know
off
what
to
you
me just-
mean.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, the time seems too close to have that make sense to me. But also, like, I don't know, we were all getting beer when we were 13 and 14. Like, it just seems a little
I mean, it
weird.
was
They don't know
around.
anybody.
There's always a way.
And they're
But-
from Wisconsin, we find out, which is a humongous maker of beer. There should be beer everywhere. The Miller Brewery and all those places around.
But for whatever reason, that's the setup that we're brought into, right? So these kids are looking to go upstairs or to Eric's parents' party and sneak down some beers. So he ends up upstairs, and then they switch to like this like POV camera where we're looking through Eric's eyes as he navigates his way through the party, which I thought was like an interesting way
I
to,
love this.
to cut that.
That made me laugh, and I don't even know why. It was funny to me. That was like the weird thing about it is I instantly like
It's something
like,
they
giggled
ended up
little,
doing
and I
a
was like,
lot.
why is that funny?
Yeah.
We don't know that.
That's true.
I noted playing in the party is Love Will Keep Us Together. A little Captain and Tennille.
The soundtrack for this is amazing. Did we hit the theme song yet? Or is
No.
that after this?
No, but
Okay,
no,
so
it's
we'll leave
later
that.
on.
I'll
Yeah.
table it.
This is a very long opening scene before
Yeah.
the intro for this show, actually.
This is where we meet all the parents.
It's like a not a very cold open. Like
Yeah, it's like a full scene before we get into that intro.
You
We
meet the
see the whole
parents,
house
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So I thought
love
the house.
The design's great.
I thought they did a good job. Again, it's tricky for us, right? Because we talked about it before. We didn't live through the 70s, but to me, this looks perfect. Like this looks very much like a house in the 70s, from what I know of television. Really,
yeah, it's like
Because I didn't live through
the
it.
huge open, like Brady Bunch style living room.
Exactly. I thought the same thing. They had that Brady Bunch.
Same
like,
thing too. Yeah, I wrote down
feel,
the Brady
the-
Bunch. There's a lot of
the
Brady
way
Bunch
the house
here.
was set up, and it's a lot of orange and yellow and flower print, like that brown color,
Yeah.
like that kind of staples, like color scheme that we associate with that time period.
It's hideous, but it works together. It's weird. Like you couldn't put any of those colors in any of our houses right now, but when they're all together like that, it works somehow.
That's when they belong,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever like spend time on any of the like real estate websites like Zillow or Redfin or whatever, but every once in a while you'll find a house that has not
Yeah.
changed
Oh, right.
since like 1975, and you see it, and immediately my heart melts from like I want to move here and I don't want to change.
But everything's covered in
anything.
asbestos.
If
Yeah,
well,
they're
if
like, well,
well
this is all
preserved,
poison, like, but I
Yeah.
want to keep it.
when it's well preserved, if it looks like it's still from that time and it was well maintained, then that would be a fun moving situation. If it's that way because they let the house go to shit, yeah, maybe
Right.
a little less.
More often, it's the latter.
You don't want to lose your house to a fire from knob and tube wiring just because you like the orange Formica. I understand that, but it still looks so great.
Also, something I noted from the party too, when he grabs those first couple beers that he tries to steal, they have those like pull tabs, like the old cans,
Love those, yeah.
which was like a nice little touch.
I wanted to talk about these because I am so surprised that, even somebody like Budweiser hasn't done this once since
Oh,
then.
like a nostalgia,
Just like a nostalgia
throwback?
rip
Yeah.
top can. I'd be so pumped about that.
That is so smart, yeah.
I would love to see
Because
that.
you see
but,
so many nostalgic can designs and stuff, right? They always try to
right,
go
but
back.
give me
I mean,
let me
Miller-
rip it clean off. That would
Well,
be
that's
so
really
cool.
easy though, because that's just like a printing change.
Anyone with that nostalgia is dead.
No, because we all buy those.
They're only
I
like
mean,
20 years older than us.
Look at classic example. Not that they're a sponsor, in case you're listening, Miller Lite, I guess, but Miller Lite was just like a middling beer that nobody really drank for the past 15, 20 years, right? Just like Coors Light, Miller Lite, Bud Light, whatever, I don't care. Then they went back to the 80s style logo. They put out all these bottles and cans looking like they used to, and then they
And then
jumped
nostalgia,
up
yeah.
to being the number 2 selling beer in the country. People saw those cans and were attracted to them. Those bottles, they were attracted to them. I mean, there's something to it.
It's one thing to, as much as I'd like to see them like do a run of those cans, right? As a beer fan myself, like it'd be just cool to like physically hold one. I've never like had a beer like that. When you want to do a throwback label, it's just you're just putting a different image in the printer, right? When you want to like create that's machinery. You have to like engineer like a new can line to create a different style can entirely to like facilitate
You
this
don't
order.
though. You just need to you just need to make the top different. Like it's the top has always been a separate part of the can. It
So
gets
it doesn't have to be
crimped on.
completely
true, yeah.
authentic to the original. It just
right.
has to be
I-
in that
just,
style.
Yeah,
Just
just
the top part, yeah. Just
Yeah,
you
that
pull
could
a
work.
key and throw it.
because also those are made of steel. Like they would hurt if you threw an empty one at somebody.
Yes.
It's like that's not how they do them anymore. So you could do aluminum, just
You know
let
why
me
they'll
rip it
never
off.
do that? Because you can't even have plastic straws right now. You think they're gonna have little throwaway fucking things?
It's no different than like cat food. Anybody
But they're
have a cat?
recyclable,
Like,
yeah.
it's the
It's
same
not like
shit.
a straw. A straw will kill a turtle. A can will
Oh,
decompose.
metal won't kill a turtle, Joe.
If you throw it hard enough, sure, but it won't. It'll decompose eventually versus a straw, which the
Maybe
problem
some
is like
Sepultura.
No, it won't. If you throw
What
it in a
metal
turtle, he could just go
decomposes?
into his shell.
I tried to clock what kind of beer it was too. I think it was just generic TV show beer, right? There
Yeah,
was no,
I couldn't
no
see it
product
either.
placement there. I tried. It was like a brown can, so nothing was flagging my
Yeah,
memory.
my assumption is if it was 1976 in Wisconsin, it's probably Miller of some variety, genuine draft.
Was
High
Milwaukee
Life,
there
Light,
at the
something.
time?
Was that
Milwaukee's best.
Yeah.
Milwaukee's best was there for sure? Yeah, which maybe that's Red's kind of beer. That seems like
Yeah.
a Red Foreman beer.
And then we'll since you brought him up, so we meet both parents as he originally goes up. There's the wife that, Eric's mom, who's like, kind of typical mom for a show. She's just pulling something out of the oven to host a party. And then we meet the dad, the militant type, that Joe, who's the dad?
Oh, it's Kurtwood Smith. Goddamn hero.
Icon.
And best known for RoboCop. Is there, Joe, for some reason, is there something weirder that you know him from before RoboCop? Or does RoboCop at least still have the number one spot?
I'll say RoboCop number 1, but if you're referring to Under Siege Part 2, then I can give you that as well.
You're the worst.
That said, I will say this is a 100% serious argument. Kelsey and I have been fighting for the entirety of our relationship that I want to name our first child Kurtwood. And she just keeps giving me the Indiana Jones answer of, you can name the dog Kurtwood. And I'm still pitching it so hard. But Kurtwood Smith is one of my favorite actors of all time.
Have we gone with like maybe a middle name pitch or just like Kurt? Or does it have to be Kurtwood?
See, Kurt is not enough for me. Kurtwood is very specific.
Okay.
Oh, know what else he's in that's really great too? Cedar Rapids. Speaking of Office.
Oh, he's the
talking
boss.
about-
He's
He's great in Cedar Rapids. And also his wife Kitty, because we're going on there, I've had the biggest crush on her since the show started. I don't know what it is about it, but
Interesting, because she was not a young lady when the show came out.
still to this day. Big
She's-
crush. Something about
She's
it.
super cute, yeah.
don't
She
know
was
if it's the
also
hair.
on Friends, too.
Seinfeld as well.
Yeah.
She's Jerry's manager for a while.
She pops
on
up in a lot
Seinfeld,
of
and
stuff.
I've
She was
always
just in
had a huge crush on her.
WandaVision, too. She was like the neighbor in
That's
like
right,
that
yep.
50s episode of WandaVision.
Yeah.
That really creepy scene, but we'll get into that. I'm sure WandaVision maybe down the line.
It's
or
funny.
something.
She's been in all that stuff, but when she pops up, she's always like, oh, "Hey, it's Kitty." It's not like
Yeah, she's always Kitty. Yep.
Yeah.
So then also we see like the dad definitely like has like that militant vibe, like man's man talking about. Well, he's making fun of Bob's hair. Bob would be the girl who was downstairs, Donna. Like she makes a joke before Eric even runs up about her father's hair, and that was one of the first things that Eric's dad Red talks about is Bob's haircut. But he's got that kind of like man's man, I was in the war type vibe right away.
Do you want to know where he's from?
Bob,
Yeah.
sure.
An amazing 70s movie called Switchblade Sisters. He's part of the male gang who is not the Switchblade Sisters, who's the girl gang in that. I don't know if anybody's seen that movie before, but it's definitely worth checking out.
Bob?
Next time, say no when he asks.
Hey, Quentin Tarantino put it out on DVD because he thought it was such a good movie, and it's really, really great. There's a scene where everybody's at a roller rink, and they just start shooting each other. I got the DVD. We'll come over and watch it one day, guys.
You know what's funny too about Bob that got me was I've seen the show in its entirety, but even at the first episode, I found myself thinking, it's like, I want to see more of Bob. Like, I just
Yep.
right off
Yeah.
the bat, he
has a
makes-
charisma about him.
Yeah, he makes me chuckle. He's a goofball, and I wanted to see more. I know you do, but like, I wanted to see more in that episode of him.
You get a little bit of a joke from Bob to Red about Red as a Toyota, which I guess like I was a former Toyota owner, but I guess in that time, having an American car was very important.
Yes.
And you get the joke that the last time he was that close to a Japanese machine, it was shooting at him.
Shooting at him? Yeah, this is my favorite joke of the whole episode.
And then Kitty's kind of justification is the gas crisis, which I was doing a little homework on. So we're talking 1976. The gas crisis started in 73, had another spike in 79. To be honest, I don't know how it was in 76. Was it still really bad in 76? I don't
Yeah,
know.
a lot of lines at the gas station, a lot of rationing.
The problem is like all the cars in the 70s just chugged gasoline.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just
Right.
went through.
But that's why
Steel.
he's buying a smaller foreign car, right? He's
right. He's being smart about it.
sitting in there.
I was
And
going to say,
then-
don't they say that about how all the cars later on in the
Yeah.
episode, how
Yeah.
they all guzzle gas?
And that was kind of the thing.
Yeah.
And to go back to the gas crisis line, I wonder sometimes with shows like this, they can take liberties, right? Because, like, unless you're going to cross-reference the year for everything, you just go, yeah, that was the 70s. So, like, was it prevalent in 76 at the time? I don't know. But, like, if I wasn't doing a long-format conversation about the episode like we're doing today, I probably wouldn't even think about it twice. I just go, yeah, that was 70s shit.
And then we also meet Midge, who's Bob's wife.
Yes. Where when they do the POV stuff with Eric, he does like the look right at her body thing, which I was
Yeah.
like, okay, he's a 17-year-old boy, right? So, and she's a good looking woman, so I can understand.
And that's Tanya Roberts, who is in A View to a Kill, the final Roger Moore James Bond movie, where her last name in the movie is Sutton.
Oh, well, look at that.
It's one of the worst James Bond movies of all time because Roger Moore is like 1,005 in it, but I love it so much. It played on TBS when we were kids, like every Friday, so I've seen it a million times.
So the scene pretty much ends. Well, Eric almost exposed the fact that he was stealing beer. His dad kind of caught him because he raised his hands up, but it kind of got disregarded. He got out of it real quick, and his mom actually hands him more beer because it was just laying around warm. So she told him to bring it downstairs to the fridge because apparently the fridge upstairs wasn't good enough to chill the beer for the party, or maybe it was too full with food to entertain guests. But mission successful. Eric gets to go downstairs and bring 4 warm beers down for him and his 3 friends.
Well, 2 warm
Two
beers
warm
and
beers.
2
Two
kind
warm
of
beers.
cold
Two warm and
beers.
2 out of what looked like very fake ice to me when I was looking at it, like that prop ice. But
How
4
wonderful
beers.
to be like, I'm so excited for 1 warm beer. Like,
I
what
thought about that too, because even
Right.
we talk about 17 versus 18, 20 versus 21. There's still never a point when we were underage drinking that I was like, beer. Like
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah.
Beer. Like what is that?
One
Like what's that
warm
going to
beer,
accomplish?
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when we were really young and we got some vodka and mixed it with Gatorade, and I was like, "This is the most disgusting thing I've
This
ever
is
tasted."
terrible.
Yeah,
No
and,
one's
like,
enjoying this.
I was so out of it at that point. I was like, I mean, out of the idea of drinking, I was like, this is not worth it. Like, I don't want to drink this. And everybody else is like, throwing up later. I'm like, glad I dodged that.
The funny thing is, like, you get older, right? Now, like, we all have, like, whatever you drink, you drink. When you're a kid drinking, you do that stuff, right? You just mix whatever with Gatorade or whatever.
It
random
doesn't matter.
soda.
Yeah, you're not enjoying it.
You don't
know?
care, and it tastes bad, but there's never even a point, and not just ours, but really any kid drinking at that point to go, all the things that taste good that make drinks for adults, like, we have access to that, too. Getting the booze was the hard part.
Yeah, you can go buy
We can get whatever mixer is going to make
cranberry
this taste
juice,
good. Yeah, like, you just don't think about it. You just like, this and Sprite, sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but that comes with
Age
experience.
experience, yeah. You
Yeah.
just don't care.
It's gonna be weird. You don't just. I mean, plus, remember, like 7-Elevens and whatnot. When we'd go and we'd buy beer, we'd buy vodka. We're gonna go out and get like a cranberry juice because then we have to get a cup and then we have
That's
to
the
get
thing
this
too.
and
We
that.
wouldn't even
It's-
use our own cups. We would get like the
You just
if
pour
you remember
some out of the bottle and then you just fill it
Yeah,
back
that's what I
up.
mean.
Yeah.
So the Gatorade bottle, the Coke bottle, or
Dude, that was my dodgeball drink of choice. Was I would pour out half a Coke and fill it up with rum and break my ankle because I couldn't. I was so drunk.
Yeah, I used to
I
do
had a
lot
system,
of, a lot of whiskey ginger ale.
when I was kicked out of Red Invasion for whatever I was doing, the system I had at that point was I would take a 1 liter bottle of Coca-Cola, you'd pour out as much Coke as the liter would fit, and you realize that was the entire pint of whiskey. would
So
fit
you
into
just
there.
chug a pint of whiskey?
In a Coke
In a
bottle.
Coke, yeah.
Yeah, it's just in a
And then I'd try to play a show, fall off the stage, and kicked out of my band. Like in a Coke.
You should have at least used Pepsi. You could have claimed it was Crystal Pepsi.
I don't know if it would have worked for the time. Joe, they brought Crystal Pepsi back? Yeah, just this one bodega. I don't know. They got old cans left.
They've got OK Soda too, guys. You should show up.
I don't know
yeah,
though.
so
I
we-
mean, I feel like drinking as a I'm not trying to glorify it because it can be dangerous, obviously. But
Yeah, it
it's
shouldn't be
fun
glorified.
times when you're that young, and it's like you were never really getting at that age, anyways. You weren't getting like blackout drunk. You didn't have enough alcohol to go between you and the 10 people and stuff like that. But they were fun times, like the hiding, the finding the places to go, what to drink
It's
out
a-
of, what to drink with, and stuff.
It's a relatable story to introduce you to these kids, right? It's a bunch of kids just hanging
Right.
out, just trying to sneak some beers, and regardless of how many beers or whatever they were doing, it's very relatable to a lot of people. So whether or not you grew up in the 70s when you're watching this show, you could be of any era, again, like where we've been talking about. It's a relatable situation that, brings you back. So he goes back downstairs with these beers, and then we see the two guys who, I don't know when they actually tell you their names, but Kelso and Hyde are sitting there looking at like a nudie magazine, and Donna's not very impressed because she says she gets to see that stuff every day. I guess I don't know if that was like a 17 thing, like the checking out the nudie magazines. I feel like we were younger doing that kind of stuff at that point, but technology was different, so who knows?
Stealing
woods
the ads
porn
from
and lake
Superstar
porn,
Video.
I think we're big, right? Like you guys remember like finding like woods porn or whatever. Like, hey, somebody threw a bunch of porn into Lewis Lake. Do you want to go look at it? And you go, yeah, of course I do. Like, why wouldn't I? Like pre all this stuff now, right? You're just like, yeah, I'll go take a look at it. Sure, why not? And if there's a warm beer at the end of that, even better.
This is a great
So, yeah.
Saturday. Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
when
relatable.
Eric comes downstairs with his warm beers as they're looking at the nudie magazine, and so he's delivering the goods. Everyone's really pleased with their one beer each, and Donna kind of jokingly says, like, have I ever told you how cute you were? Because they were talking about actually the fact that he might get his dad's car. I'm sorry. So it wasn't the beer. It was the
Vista
talk of getting
Cruiser.
the car. So she's like, joking around, like, oh, you have a car now? Have I ever told you how cute I thought you were? And then Kelso went, you told me. Like, you told me you thought he was cute. And like, she gets she gets very embarrassed by that. So like now, like, I guess we can see that there's something there, right? That's going to be a potential for the show where, Eric and Donna might be love interests. That's the very first hint of it.
To cut into that too, right? So we meet the rest of them, right? So you have basically Donna, Kelso, Hyde, and Jackie.
No, Jackie isn't there yet.
Jackie's not there.
Oh, Jackie's not there yet.
And
Okay,
no Fez either.
And
no Fez yet, yeah. But from what you see them, right? So Kelso has like feathered hair. He's like a pretty boy. He's just kind of like a regular. You find out he's kind of dumb from what he says, but he's kind of like just everyday following the fashion of that time. Hyde is kind of a different rock and roller kind of guy. He's a little on the outside of things. And Donna
It's like the
is just,
Matthew McConaughey, like Dazed and Confused character, like.
Yeah, they
See, I
kind
don't
of
see
went
that.
that.
You get that? You get
A
Matthew
little
McConaughey
bit.
vibe from him?
Yeah.
I get more that he's like a little more anarchistic or something. He's trying to be like a little, I'm against the system, man.
Well, you know what they did that, like, if I was to say one knock early on the show, I guess what this group was, it looks like they're trying to show you different styles of the 70s through all these characters, right? So, like, with a lot of groups, you'd probably be in, like, a clique where a lot of people are into the same stuff. Not that that's every group, but instead of having it where they're all the rock and roll kids or all, like, the disco kids or whatever, they just kind of put one of everything in there to expose you to all the looks of the 70s, so you're seeing that, so everyone's a little bit different.
Do you guys remember the British version of this show?
I know of it, and
No.
I've seen...
No, it was called Times Like These.
Yeah,
and
it was
the-
trash.
it's shot for shot, basically.
It's shot for shot script
Oh, I need to see
identical
this.
remake. So
It's
it
on
came
YouTube.
out.
You can
It
find the
came
whole
out
thing.
in like '99, I think it was. It's not the whole thing. You can only find a few episodes because it didn't even make the full season because they like injected the same Americana into it, but it's a British TV show, and people are like, "What the fuck is this? Like, who
These
cares?"
jokes aren't
Like,
relatable to us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
this is not our experience.
yeah, they used the same dialogue. All they did was change the character names, and the sets are different. It's the
That's so
same
weird.
exact thing, though. Yeah, but it's worth a watch for sure because you can catch the same dialogue, and it's strange. But it's funny how hard it missed because they didn't change it enough to adapt to the country that it was being viewed in.
It was so close that it looks more like a parody than like a
It's like
sister show.
it's like an SNL skit almost.
Yeah.
That's so weird. I'm going to watch it tonight. I'm really intrigued by that.
To get into right after this scene, basically is this whole thing we talked about was just the intro scene. So from this point on, they toast their beers, their warm beers, and then we get into the intro of the show. So the intro to the show comes to be very iconic, but for us to watch the first time, any early thoughts of the intro? It's just 6 kids all singing a song together in the car. And luckily, it's a big enough car that you could do 3 in the front, 3 in the back.
I
which
hate
isn't a
this.
today
I
thing.
hate this intro.
I love it.
I hate this intro. They go on to have some of the best intros. They changed it up a lot throughout the series. They were all
So, yeah,
They
season
re-record
one-
the song and
this
they
particular
changed
one
them.
though. I hate. I do not like this one at all.
So I
It
took
was
note of
long.
that.
Yeah, that's
Season
a tough
1.
one for
Long.
me. I love this actual song. It's In the Street by Big Star, right? Amazing
Originally,
song.
yes, and then re-recorded as that 70s song, and I don't know exactly how that works. It's the same song,
It's
so I
the
don't know how
same
you
song.
get to retitle
They're
it.
getting their
Yeah.
money. But Robert Griffin, I believe, is the guy.
Todd Griffin.
Todd Griffin, rather, is the guy who
Todd
did this,
Griffin.
this version. So, again, we've never seen the show before, whatever. But the way the show worked and syndication and everything, it was always Cheap Trick doing it.
Cheap Trick did seasons 2 through 7, and
But
then
that's
Todd
my
Griffin was
syndication.
all of season 1.
In syndication, though, I think they pull back to Cheap Trick. And Cheap Trick's another one of my favorite bands of all time. So I was so excited. I was like, yeah, Cheap Trick covering Big Stars is going to rule. And then this happened. And I was like, wait, who's singing this? And it totally threw me off. I had to look up, and just some guy from some, like, shitty hard rock band from the 90s.
Yeah,
I
not
wish
to
they went
like
with Cheap Trick from the very beginning.
to try to not stick to go ahead, right? Because we're gonna rate this show based
It's the
on just
intro.
our
I don't
initial
think that
impression
really
of
counts.
one.
You know.
But yeah, but to get into it, yeah, I think anyone who knows this show really only identifies the Cheap Trick version. So to watch it back and hear the original version of the song, which was used for all of season 1, the Todd Griffin version of the song lasted the entirety of the first season.
It's funny
Yeah,
you
which
say
is
that
crazy,
because
but I don't
I-
think it made it through syndication.
I remember
I've seen Cheap Trick
when they
and
made the
Big Star
change.
Live both do the song, both times, A+.
But I remember when they made the change, and I was so used to this one, it was like it felt wrong to me, and I hated the Cheap Trick one for a while, and now I only remembered the Cheap Trick one, and hearing this, I hated it.
They
Like,
also later on they do a Christmas one it slaps hard, dude. It's so good.
Oh, with the bells?
Yeah, it's
that version
really
rules,
really
yeah.
good.
So overall, because with Nick, for you, was it just the fact that it wasn't the familiar music to you that made you not like it?
It was the contrast for me, so I can't really, for this show, give you a good judgment on it. I guess if I have to ignore the Cheap Trick version, then it wasn't that bad. But in contrast, I hated it, so we'll stay in the middle with it.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. So we're introduced to 6 characters, and to this point of the
visually,
show, we've only seen
it's
4.
fine. Visually,
Yeah.
it's a great idea.
Oh, visually great, yeah.
So we're
prefer Cheap
seeing
Trick.
6 kids. We only know about 4 of them up until this moment, but so you get an idea. There's going to be 6 main characters to the show, and because of 70s style cars being formatted a little bit different, you can get away with all 6 of them riding in the car at once, 3 and 3. And just a fun intro. It's just a bunch of kids hanging out. So again,
Down the
relatable
street.
and fun. Down the street. So intro ends, we end up back in Eric's basement. So this is kind of like a main set for this whole show.
I want
right?
to talk about that when you have a second.
Yes. And then so they're watching the Brady Bunch with no sound while Eric and Donna are doing the voiceover work for it. And the new girl that's being added that we remembered from the intro, who, again, I don't know if they announce her name anytime soon, but it's Jackie. Jackie's not having it. She's not entertained by this at all. And she wants to listen to it, so they give her headphones so she can listen to the audio she basically spoiled the fun, so they stopped doing the voiceovers anyways at this point.
I feel like we all wrote and mentioned the Brady Bunch before this scene. So I feel like when they're showing the Brady Bunch, it's obviously they're trying to be like, this is what we're going for here. This is like a Brady Bunch of older kids. So I do like the sort of, just in case you don't get it, this is what we're doing sort of scenario.
And they're watching a very iconic episode of the Brady Bunch when Marsha gets hit in the nose by a football.
Yep.
Yeah. And Nick, what was it you wanted to say about their Eric's basement?
I love how genuine it is. I love that it's a piece of shit basement. You can see
Dude,
the ductwork.
that was us hanging out in your basement.
I know, and that's why it hit really close to home. Like it's just
for
like
sure.
it's just my shitty basement with a couch we found on the fucking sidewalk.
Yep.
There's like duct tape on the pillows in this show. You can see the heating vents, and there's just a washer and dryer there. I love how they didn't ruin that by being, a furnished basement and stuff or something like that. I think it hit home.
Yeah, other sitcoms have like a fire pole that goes down into the basement,
Yeah.
and like a fancy
bar.
fridge and a bar that was the dad's or something, and kids are stealing beer. Yeah,
It's too clean. Yeah,
100% reminded
I definitely
me
got
of
the
hanging out in
same
your
vibe. And to go back to our own lives, we hung out in Nick's basement quite a bit when we were kids, and it definitely had that vibe. And for all 5 of us, I guess we watched it, and that instantly took us back to doing that. So,
and at that age, and drinking, and like everything about it,
Allegedly.
just sort of tracks so well. Allegedly, good call.
We can
then,
admit to drinking when we were underage.
Yeah, that's fine.
I guess
I
now,
don't
right?
think someone's gonna come knocking on the
We're
door.
not going to talk about like somebody who bought us beer who get in trouble like Schlitz.
Yeah. At 35 years.
They bought us Schlitz.
So we
I was
see.
just trying to pop Nick on that one.
So also the vibe that we're getting at this point is that Jackie and Kelso are together, right? Because she's really only talking to him when she has her complaints. She's kind of addressing everything to him to address to everyone else, talking, using him as the middleman.
Yeah, she's
And-
very demanding.
Yeah.
She's very demanding of him, so you definitely get that right off the bat.
Yeah, you can see that they don't necessarily like her being around. I mean, everyone's been in that situation, right? Somebody you're friends with is dating somebody you don't necessarily like. I think everybody here has been guilty of that.
Yeah,
I think
it
no
happens.
one can say they haven't been guilty of being that person, right? Or in both ways, being that person to a group of friends or having that person connected
And
to
it's
them
that balance
to their
of like
friends.
the group dynamic, right? Because you're trying to keep that same dynamic, but there's a +1 there that's kind of throwing it off. And that's what happens because Kelso asks Eric about the car situation because they're trying to go to the Todd Rundgren concert, and Jackie didn't know anything about it. So she's like, "What concert?" And
that's a great
you know-
example, too, of the kind of mindset you have when you're that age where you're like, we're all going to go see this band, this thing. We're cool. We're hip. We're into it. We're clued into it. And then somebody's significant other doesn't quite get it. And then it's even worse to try to be like, no, they want to come. The
Yeah.
kind of shit that only is important to you when you're 17, but it means a lot then.
You know what I thought was strange, and I'm probably just like not being able to remember a similar situation, but The fact that you get into this, you start the season 1, episode 1 show, and there's 2 couples already. So they're not teasing. They kind of do it with Donna and Eric, but you can tell there's already something there. They don't start at the very beginning with these relationships. And it's interesting to see because usually it's a married couple if they're older or something like that, or they're younger and they start at the beginning and then they bump into each other and they do the whole chemistry thing. This just starts in the middle with 2 relationships, which I really like. They just kind of cut out the bullshit with it.
Yeah, I think, well, for them, and we'll talk more about Eric and Donna as the show goes on, but yeah, for this relationship in particular, you already see the dynamic of it. You already kind of know that, like, they're just young and a couple, so neither of them seem to even like each other that much, but when you're that age, it's more like, well, this is the situation, right? Like, and neither person wants to be the one to break up.
Yeah.
So they kind of get into that.
Yeah, it
And,
feels like Jackie and Kelso are more in a relationship of convenience more than anything else.
They're physically attracted to each other, and when you're
Sure.
17, that's
But she's
more
younger.
important than it
She's-
should be, right?
She's a freshman, so she's 3
She's
years younger
younger,
than them. Yeah, so she's also hanging out with the cool kids, the older kids. There's that dynamic too.
She's like 14?
In
Yeah.
real life, she was like
Really?
14 when she filmed it. She lied about her age
Yeah,
to
I
get
remember that,
on
yep.
the show.
Yeah, not to say
Which is
we've
crazy,
seen the
like,
other
through
episodes,
hoops,
but
like,
later
you'd think
on
they
it
would
shows
catch
on
that,
from
yeah.
the show that, you know, they graduate, she doesn't because she's younger. There's like all this stuff.
But yeah, they make it pretty known, right? Because when Kelso brings up the concert, they're not happy that he just said it out loud in front of her. So they obviously don't want her to be there. And then we find out that she's not really a fan of them either. So it's like this situation doesn't really work out for anybody. Nobody really wants her there, including her. But she's with Kelso, and that's just kind of what it is. I also want to go back a second because the Todd Rundgren concert idea I kind of liked because he had a couple big hits in that time, and they played like his 2 biggest ones.
Yeah, they put in the episode and at the end.
Yeah, so like I Saw the Light was like a huge song, which I think is the one that they played in the concert.
I think they played it in the concert, and Hello, It's Me, I think they play at the end.
Hello, It's Me was like the one at the end, yeah. And a fun little fact, I Saw the Light he wrote in 20 minutes while he was on Ritalin.
Wow.
What? I didn't think Ritalin was around then. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice pick for someone who was relevant to the time, popular enough, but like you'd probably have to deep dive, right?
Yeah, I love that it wasn't like we're going to see Ted Nugent, we're going to see Led Zeppelin. They picked
Yeah,
like
they did a little bit of a deeper dive.
a person who's going to be maybe playing Wisconsin
Yeah, I was going to say, someone who's going to be in the middle of nowhere,
on
Wisconsin.
tour.
yeah.
He's a Midwest level.
Right.
You know, he's not playing the big cities. Maybe he's coming down to close to them.
Yeah, so like when Joe writes that 1999 show and not that 90s show, like they might be going to see O-Town instead of the Backstreet Boys, right?
I've seen O-Town.
I bet.
Wait, have you seen O-Town live?
I was in Florida at like this random park.
That's fine. I was in
and
Florida. Is as much
all
as
of
that
a
sentence you
sudden,
need to
I look
say.
up and there's like a stage, and it's like O-Town. This was like way past them being like uber popular because they were never even that popular. But it was just
Yeah, they were
really
pretty low
strange.
tier at their height.
Joe, do you think it's more random that he saw O-Town than you seeing Big Star?
No.
Like, is that like oh, Big Star's in town. Let's all get in the van.
Big Star is a classic band, heralded. They are in museums.
Like physically?
Physics. Well,
Just sitting there.
every one of them is dead, unfortunately. I saw them before Alex Chilton died, obviously, but you can go and people will talk about Big Star as like very important rock and roll band. I don't know how many people are gonna say O-Town. It's not like O-Town. People are gonna be like even if I don't like them, the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC are gonna be heralded as these big bands.
Right.
I've also seen the Backstreet Boys.
See, that makes sense
That,
to me.
that one was on purpose.
O-Town is not a band I think people will be like remembering as a
And
who's
then
lower than New Edition from last week's episode.
How dare you?
Belle Biv DeVoe, who are amazing.
Who's lower than Belle
Well,
Biv
Belle
DeVoe?
Biv DeVoe was an offshoot of New Edition.
Right, I'm trying to think of like the second tier to that. You know what I mean?
Any of those New Jack Swing bands that weren't
Yeah.
Belle Biv DeVoe that you don't remember today.
I'm trying to think of the band who sings at the club scene in New Jack City, who like we're totally forgotten about. But that's the equivalent to
Yeah.
O-Town.
In anger that Kelso even brought up the concert, Donna and Eric head upstairs for a minute, and now Jackie and Kelso are gonna fight. And I loved she wants to go, but she only wants to be invited more than she actually wants to go. And she says that she loves Todd Rundgren, I believe is what she said. And but she did accurately say hello, it's me. She said like I have
knows
the
the song,
45 for
yeah.
hello, it's me. So like, all right, so she kind of knows him. And I loved his excuse back was I didn't know you liked music, like which is like something
In general.
Such
just
a
like,
general,
that's such
yeah.
a good way out of that.
It just shows too much he like doesn't give a shit about anything about this girl's personality or, it's just a physical relationship.
Right, and to go into that right after, she basically just uses like, hey, remember that time we hooked up? And that was like all it took his like bird brain to completely flip. And he's like, yeah, I like hooking up with you. And then like they get right into it, and then like they're just like making out on the couch until like Donna and Eric come back.
This is the first time too in this show, which again we don't know if it'll become a thing, but I really love in this episode is the weird interstitial where they'll have some sort of like weird music, like baby, 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 like a Led Zeppelin sort of thing, and it's like everybody dancing, and there's Paisley and acid test sort of backgrounds. They do a good job of having a very unique way to cut from scene to scene by having something interesting versus just going to black and cutting to the next scene.
I took note of that, and I was going to mention it later, but since you brought it up, I didn't like the transitions because they were wildly inconsistent.
So it's weird because I don't know if they did this for the whole first season or not, but there's audio in those transitions. They're
I was
like
going to
they're
mention that.
they're talking and stuff, and
I
it
think each
turns
one's
it,
different.
it,
There's one that do and one they don't, right?
They
I
don't
think
do
they're all
that
different.
later. They
That
don't
was
do
my
that
issue.
later in the show, but
So there
like
was
I
like
said.
one of them that it was just like kind of like CGI 70s style flowers that were just falling, right? And that was one of them. So okay, that doesn't involve any characters. Then there's one where it's just like the three guys just sucking helium out of a balloon and just
right.
What
Yeah.
song were they singing? I
Hooked
can't
on a
remember which
Feeling?
one. Yeah, it was Hooked on a
Right?
Feeling.
Yeah, it's a kind
Yeah.
of feeling.
Yep, and then there's another one where like Fez is just dancing, and it was
in a
like,
disco ball, yeah.
but they were like, they didn't make like they did. There wasn't like whatever happens. Like the helium thing was really strange to me because it was just it made no sense.
Yeah, you could tell it was a very work in progress.
Yeah, but like because I would have been okay with that if every transition was that, but because like the one before that was just random flowers dropping that didn't have any characters, I'm like, what is like? Are they just testing multiple things and seeing which one they like best?
I have a feeling this went to a test audience and that confused people. And then after they were like, let's do all the transitions the same because I don't remember that throughout the whole series.
Yeah, I thought
No,
that
we're
was
not
just
supposed
really
to talk about it,
strange.
but
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was weird.
It's just a weird thing to
but-
cut to. Like I don't know. It just
But did they do that though back in that
I
time?
don't
Or-
remember the audio and anything else. Any other episode.
I'm trying to think of other shows in that
No,
era.
I'm trying to think
like
of-
in the 70s. Are you saying
Yeah,
like
yeah.
At the time, I
is
can't
that-
recall any now.
it would have been more
Like,
of a
maybe it's
variety show?
It's
type
very
thing.
similar to Austin Powers movies. The transitions. There was
Yeah.
a dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, it's
thing.
true. If they're going for
Yeah,
a
but I
show,
mean,
it
the-
would have been something akin to like maybe Laugh-In, which was like a more comedy variety show, right?
Exactly.
Where you cut to
Like I
something
said,
funny.
a variety type show would
And
have
then you
things
cut
more like
back
that, less than like a sitcom would. But
Yeah,
you know,
but
it
maybe
is
they're
what
trying
it
to just
is.
reference something like Laugh-In because it was of the time. But I like it because I think it's just different, right?
And to end that season, we're getting a little bit more sexual tension between Eric and Donna, because they see them kissing, and then it was like something about like joking about like not leaving these two alone together, and then Eric just kind of goes like, my sister says that about us, and I'm like, okay,
Did
I
you
guess
guys
shoot your
get
shot,
any-
Eric. Go ahead.
Did you guys get any chemistry from them, Eric
Not
and
yet.
Donna? Yeah, me neither.
Not at this point.
Not
no.
yet.
No, it starts to build at that point, I think.
They-
Because
they've
you kind of
teased it.
see him being a little awkward and her being more dominant
Yeah. So
in that scenario. So you
they're
see
setting the
what's going-
scene. They tell that joke, and then there's like earlier in the show where we find out that Donna told Kelso that she thought he's cute. But as far as like on-screen chemistry between the two of them, not yet. But it's still early in the show.
Is this a scene where she hits his head into the pipe?
I thought he does
Yeah,
that.
yeah, they're sitting on the stairs.
Yeah,
That's when
because
she
he does it a couple
that.
times to himself, and
Was
then
that
she
it?
does it to him.
I watched it today,
Yeah.
but I'm only like 50% sure.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure it
I'm
is.
pretty sure it's later. But regardless, so it cuts from there to a new scene where it's made to look like Eric is talking to Donna. They're now outside and talking about how he feels, and like, it's you're to assume that he's talking to Donna. That's the joke, right? And then we find out that he's just talking to the car because now the car is in his possession.
Well, it's not in his possession yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah,
It's more like the "I've always wanted you."
It's in
Yeah.
his sights.
Right.
By the way, at the time watching it as a kid, I always thought it was the Mystic Cruiser. It wasn't until like recently I learned it was the Vista Cruiser.
Yeah, I was never a big car guy myself. I guess I don't think about that stuff.
About it. I've never had a license.
You know what happened right after the scene that actually kind of got to me was Donna's dad shows up and just kind of like out of nowhere, just basically is like, moments like this are the most fun you're ever going to have. And I'm like, man, he's so right. And it's just like, I don't know why he just walks by and lets them know, like, hey, you guys just sitting around in the driveway, just hanging out. You're going to look back and this is going to be the best times of your life. And it's just like, it's the most valid point you could possibly make, but it was so out of nowhere.
On both
I go a little
ends,
different
too.
on that. I think those are amazing times, but I feel like if you meet somebody who talks about how the best times of their entire life were high school and they haven't had any good times since then, it's a really depressing conversation. Like, I feel like
no, it just means you're carefree. You don't have the responsibilities. You're not getting hit
sure,
with
it's
life.
easy, fun life. Like, we had the best time doing that, but I feel like there are some people that we could name who we know who basically wish that it was still.
Well, peaking in high school is one thing.
Yeah, I think it's to Ferg's point where is after high school, your life is more on you. You know what I mean? Whereas in high school, everything is taken care of for you until you go off or whatever.
It's all just hanging out. And
so yeah, it's all just whatever you want and no worries. You have the cushion, for most people, anyways.
I was going to say though that they sort of balance that out by saying like, what, sitting around hanging out in the driveway, really? So you get that both. It's true because from a kid's perspective or a teenager's perspective, what do you mean sitting around in the driveway talking is like going to be the best thing? We got our whole lives ahead of us.
Right.
And then you have the dad saying, no, this really is, you better enjoy it.
Yeah, and if you
So
look,
you
I
have
mean,
both
how
of
many
them.
episodes are we just talking amongst ourselves about old times, where we're just hanging out, talking and stuff like, within this show, we bring it up with ourselves all the time in our social group.
Yeah, it's funny
Correct.
too because I think we are an anomaly. We've all known each other for so long and stuck around for some fucking reason, right?
Yeah.
No, most people don't have that. I don't think so. We live in that. Fortunately, I think it's cool, but those were still better times. I think back then.
And I do want to bring this up because we talked about the transitions, and that scene was just kind of, that was it, right? He talks to the car, then Bob comes, tells you something that's very reflective and depressing, and walks away. So then we get into the weirdest we were talking about transitions before. The classic Farrah Fawcett poster, which is moving lips, talking. So again, to go to the weird flowers, the helium, the Farrah Fawcett poster.
That was super
just
weird, yeah.
Just whatever weird thing you want to do for your transitions,
Is that the
just
one
do
that Led
that
Zeppelin, like
at
the
all times.
baby,
Yeah.
baby?
Just pick a weird thing and just kind of be in that lane the whole time. Don't just do 50 different weird things that aren't linked together. But yeah, that I forgot to mention that one. But since that's right where it happened, I'll bring it up there. And then they end up in a restaurant, hangout, arcadey, like this is where the young kids hang out type of spot.
They're the max.
Yeah, that's where you
Yes.
first meet Balky. I mean Fez.
Yeah.
Right?
So yes, and that's
Balky
where we
exchange
first meet
student.
Fez. And I actually did like one of the early jokes with Fez was where Donna and Jackie go to the bathroom together. Like Jackie's going to the bathroom, it's like, Donna, you come in, and then like Fez is just. I got a laugh out of me. Fez is like, oh, this is what we do in America. So he's like, I too have to go to the bathroom. Eric?
That's a good
It's so
joke.
good,
You have to pick somebody to go to the bathroom with you. Like,
Well
I
written.
did think that was very funny.
This is the first time we meet Fez too, and it's so strange to me that they never let you know that Fez is an acronym. That it's not his name.
They never do, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you
Oh,
assume
Oh, yeah, it's
his
like foreign
name
exchange
is,
student, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it stands
Yeah.
for foreign exchange student. It's an acronym, but they never tell you that. Like, I didn't find that out until fairly recently. Like, I never
they
knew
never
the
tell you where
whole
he's
thing.
from or anything or his
Yeah.
real name. It's crazy, yeah.
But like, you'd assume they'd be like, Fez. That's what we call Greg or something. They'd have eventually let it go, but they never even mentioned that it's just an acronym. It's a
Talk
weird
about
thing.
Well,
typecasting too, because like I've seen Wilmer Valderrama in things or on things before, and I just I can't see him without that lisp and accent.
Even in Yo Mama on MTV.
I
Yo
don't even know what
Mama.
that is.
It was a television show on MTV where the premise was literally it was a reality show where people just went back and forth telling Yo Mama jokes. Well,
I
like
might have to
all the
look that
people in
up.
the background were like, "Oh snap!"
So it's like
Don't
a
look it
rap
up. It
battle.
Yes,
it was
but
a
just with
waste
Yo
of-
Mama jokes.
A waste
I
of-
might have to go look that up.
It
Oh,
it
God.
had a few seasons too. It was
Oh boy.
as good as you think it would be.
I think the only thing I remember from him is he came up on the list where, was it maybe Lindsay Lohan had a list of like everybody she slept with like ratings and everything, and he was on it. I just remember when it came out, because there was a bunch of actors, you know, it was like James Franco or whoever like was popular at the time. I remember when it came out, everyone sort of universally being like, Fez? like poor
What was
Fez.
his
Everyone was
rating?
like, really?
Hear that,
Fez?
everybody? Fez fucks.
I was gonna say he became like a big star.
Every
because of
popular like woman in Hollywood in that era somehow ended up with Fez. It's a thing. Look it
Good
up
for him.
in your leisure time. He has quite the track record.
He pulled good numbers.
Yeah. So this it was a lot of weird, like that scene pretty much only existed to introduce you to Fez, right? Because that's all that really happened there, and then they got right into another scene.
And if nothing else, maybe just to show you that, like, hey, here's another set piece. We're
Yeah.
probably going to come back to this place. It's a hangout. It's outside of the house. Because you haven't
do
seen
show
any
you a
place
lot
yet
of
that was
sets.
outside of the family sort of dynamic, right?
Yeah,
Like,
like-
this isn't a family garage, driveway, house,
I do
basement.
question how he ended up with them, like that crew. Like they just saw
They
him
just
and
took him. Yeah,
in.
just
Like,
took him.
Yeah,
on
they
the
just
wing.
took him in.
He did something funny that they liked, and sometimes the mystery's good. Like sometimes I don't mind a little bit of like things don't have to be explained. But yeah, we had last week we did Mr. Cooper and we talked like there was like 2 sets the whole show. This one, a lot of different sets, a lot of
You've
different
got
sets.
basements, driveways, concert venues,
Yeah.
gas stations.
This whole hangout was,
restaurants.
for like a 1-minute clip just to basically say, hey, this is Fez. He hangs out with us too. And like they could have just thrown him in like a random other basement scene, but this is where they first bring you the Fez scene. And, good for them, I guess. They were really behind this show. They felt confident enough that they needed 50 sets. But the next scene is actually the circular shot, which, in the future becomes an iconic shot for the show. But for the purpose of our show, where we only talk about episode 1, first time we're seeing it, and it's the 4 guys are all together just getting high. And there's just almost like the camera would be like the lazy Susan in the middle of the table, and it's just going around the circle over and over as people are talking. And I think this works really well. It kind of makes you feel like you're in the circle with them the way they
it's
shoot
really
it.
cool.
Yeah.
It's different, right? I don't think I've seen much of that in
Right,
anything
it's very
else.
unique, but it's very simple, which is kind of cool because like it's a very simple, obvious shot, but it's not anything that's associated with anything else I can think of.
And especially in a first episode too, it's like a great way to like, because you're just cropping out one character at a time, and you get to see
Yep.
them in their own reacting and having conversations with other people, and you get a better idea of a character in that way. I think it's a good idea, especially for a pilot.
the dialogue in that scene is so believable too. Like if you told me they all just really got super high and then filmed, I'd believe you.
Right.
That's why I like it
Right.
too, because that could go so poorly if you're like, hey, we're going to film all these people pretending to be high. Usually that does not translate well. It's
you
hard to
overdo
watch.
it. That's how other shows just do it. Like, hey man,
Right, yeah.
like real slow talking, and they are a parody of somebody getting high usually. And this seemed pretty authentic. Kelso laughing got me. There was a scene where they just cut to him and he's just dying laughing. And that one really got me.
Oh, the car that runs on water joke got me really good.
Yeah,
too,
that was a good
with
one.
Fez. Like,
So it is a boat.
And then in the midst of them all sitting there getting high, Red calls Eric upstairs. So this is a scene I ended up, it was a funny bit, but it went on for too long and like was getting me dizzy.
See,
So
not for me. I think I wrote down, I was like, Red is the best character ever.
Yeah.
I love Kurtwood Smith. This is
But they're trying to
fantastic.
show you how high Eric is while talking to his parents. So basically, the parents are going, without telling them, they're letting it be known that the car is going to be his. And they're going over all the responsibilities of the car. All the while, Eric is violently high. But to show that, while they're talking to him, the walls are moving behind them. And I don't know if it was just the time I was watching it, but like I was like literally getting dizzy watching the scene. And it was going on for so
Yeah.
long. And I'm like, okay, can we move past the moving wall thing? Like, I get the joke.
I love
I
that they
liked
didn't
it,
go
though.
digital with that. I love that they could have put some sort of stars on the screen or whatever. They could have done a bunch of things digitally. But I love that they did a physical piece of the set to like get that point across. I thought it was
Yeah, it
really
aged
smart.
so much better that way.
that wasn't an effect.
I thought it was a green screen. When I was
No,
watching it.
they move the set wall back and forth behind them.
Do they really? I was
I'm gonna
convinced it
have
was
to
green screen.
rewatch.
Yeah, I was
Like,
convinced it was a green screen when I watched it.
I was going to say, and that was so accurate too. Like, I know you said that you felt like it went a little long, but like that is very accurate as to what it was like to get called up when you were high, like to your parents, and just the
When's it gonna end?
yeah, exactly. Like the when's it gonna end? It's going on too long. I don't know what they're saying. They're talking back and forth. I thought it was really cool.
But
That's
this
just
is this was it. This was Eric actually getting the car. They hand him the keys. And
I'm surprised that he, not to cut you off,
No,
but
go ahead.
I'm surprised that they didn't reinforce that he's high by having him not catch the keys. And like, I was expecting them to
Just bounce off his face.
yeah,
or
bounce
something,
off
yeah.
his face or something. I
They
was
would probably
surprised
have to
at
pivot
that.
if they did that, right? They'd have to get into them realizing he was high, and that would have been a whole other conversation.
And then he wouldn't
and,
get the
like,
car, so yeah.
Right. So then we go from there to like now the next scene is like them preparing to go to this concert. So like this was the concert that they've been planning on going to, but first car ride, right? The parents don't know where he's going. Red comes out and tells him, this car's old, don't take it out of town. And he's like, yep. And like they're supposed to go to a concert that by when I looked it up is about an hour and a half away from them, right?
Pretty good
And
hike.
yep. And he goes back inside, he's with Kitty, and the first thing he says is they're leaving town. And it's like, how do you know that? Because I told him not to.
I love
And,
that.
like,
Yeah.
That was perfect because
Red,
you know what?
such a
I'll
great
tell
character.
you, the first day I got my license, I remember my mom let me use the car. She said, do not drive with anyone else today. Do not leave town. The first thing I did was picked up Ferg and drove to the mall. First thing I did.
That was the first thing I did too. Was drove to the mall, and I almost killed me and a few people at the Rotary in Revere.
I got incredibly lost on the way home. I missed the exit coming back home. Drove
Ended up in
straight
Boston,
into the city.
right?
Yep, and just drove around the city trying to figure out how to get home.
That's
Figure
one
it
way
out.
to
We'll
do
circle
it.
back.
And it was very pre-GPS world. So in smartphone, no. It's funny to look back now, but when we were 16 years old, there's no GPS, there's no smartphone, and I'm just aimlessly driving through Boston in the middle of the Big Dig, trying to figure out how to get home.
It's crazy thing is some of those times. I remember Gordo and I used to drive around before we'd all meet up on Friday nights when Dee Snider had his hair metal radio show. In Gordo's car.
I've seen Dee Snider live. If we want to get into concerts,
That's a good concert.
but just Dee Snider, I would have liked to have seen Twisted Sister.
Sure. I mean, if given the opportunity.
Right.
But that car you had, Gordo, couldn't even make it up a hill, and we would just go for long drives, listening
Putter,
to hair
putter,
metal,
putter,
and you'd
putter,
end up in some weird North Shore town where you had to get up a giant hill, and you'd be halfway up, and everyone would just start panicking and be like, so if we have to jump out right now, is it better to
And,
open
yeah.
the door?
Gordo-
Do we go out one side or two?
That car was a shit.
For
box.
anybody listening, Gordo is the oldest one of us, so thus got his license before any of us.
First,
So
yeah.
he had the car and stuff like that, and it was. I remember when you backed up on 93, just put it in reverse. So that was
because I missed an exit. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm
yep,
just
I
gonna
remember
back
that.
up on one of the most major highways.
Listen, the Massachusetts runs thick in my blood. I mean that's a total Boston, driver move.
I missed it. Fuck it. Throw it in reverse.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck it.
We'll
I'm
get
going
there.
in
We
back.
can do this.
Hey, and one other thing I want to touch on that scene was the fact that they were like, yeah, they're leaving town, and just immediately ran upstairs to have sex. And
Yeah.
like, I didn't get the vibe from Red in the early scenes. Like he'd be like, I thought it was gonna be like kind of almost like that.
Red's a man's
Al
man
Bundy
now.
doesn't want to like sleep with his wife, and he was just like, yep, let's go do it. And they ran
Well,
right
Red's a
upstairs.
man's man, like Nick said, and Kitty is
Yeah.
Kitty, so
That's yeah.
all in.
She's stacked.
But,
Yeah,
I
I
did-
didn't get any vibe that he didn't like his wife or anything like that.
No,
He
yeah, I
didn't,
guess
I didn't get
he just
that.
came off so straight laced that you don't
And
see
you
him
didn't-
in a passionate throw like right after. I guess.
But I was going to say, you also didn't get the archetype wife doesn't want to sleep with the husband.
Yeah.
Either. Like there was.
Yeah, she's not the
It
Peg
seemed
Bundy,
more normal.
or no, that's the opposite. I guess she always wants to, but like the sad, like no, don't want to have sex with you type of wife. She's not that character.
Well, I mean, they're not those kind of parents. Like the show starts with them having a house party and stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I
Not
guess
like your
that's true
typical,
too. They
like-
do start with the party.
Yeah, that's
and,
true.
That car apparently it had issues, right? Right after that scene, we cut to them. What were they, about an hour out from town already, and the car died on them?
Battery
And the
dies.
The mechanic, I was like, who is this creep? Like, they cut to the mechanic, and apparently it was just a dead battery. But as they're talking about, like, how the parent, like, Jackie said, like, oh, let's just tell our parents or whatever what's going on. And there's this nice little, like, I don't want to say it's a dream sequence, but there's, like, a cut, like, fantasy sequence of
Seems
them
amazing, by the way.
them all mouthing the words to what they imagine their parents would be doing while the actors who portray the parents are acting it out. And every time they did the mom's voices, it just, that got me each time. It was just so funny.
Yeah,
to me.
it was
Just so
really
high
good.
pitched and so ridiculous.
I love that it's capped off with them all doing the hustle.
Yes, which then transitions into the kids doing it.
Also, a joke we stepped over real quick, but I just remembered was when they're trying to decide who's going to get shotgun in the car. And
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
Kelso, get in the back.
Get in the back as he's getting in. Like, that's so relatable all the
Yeah, that was
times
good.
when you're in somebody's car and you're trying to figure out who's going to get in the seats. That just killed me.
I mean, they could have ran 3 in the front. I mean, they eventually have to do that anyways, right? They both could
They
have.
got
they
bench
got that
seats.
bench
They can pull
seat.
it off, yeah.
And then the battery, I guess, was, I don't know the inflation for this. It was like 32 for battery, so I guess that's about right now, right?
It's probably like 150-ish, almost 200 maybe. Like it's
No,
a huge
it can't be
inflation.
that much.
It's the 70s, man. That
I
was
don't know, 76 to now.
Battery-
I feel like
Yeah, but I'm
that's
saying
yeah,
a battery
expensive
now is
now.
like, what, about 100 something now? So I just
Depends
bought
on
one
the
recently. It was
battery.
like 170, so I guess, yeah.
But also, he's saying this battery you need at this random gas station.
He knows
at
that they're in a
night.
pinch. Yeah, like you either
That
get
guy
the
might be
battery or
getting
you're
something
stuck
out of
here.
that,
You're not
right?
going
the
to
battery
the
might
concert.
cost
Yeah.
17. He's pocketing the rest.
And he also let them know it was like $32 for the battery or 2 tickets.
yeah, because
Why
you
is
find
that
out that he's also a
garage-
big Todd
what-
Rundgren fan.
I want to know why that garage was open that late at night.
Well,
Yeah,
it's not that late, right? Because they're going to a concert.
Well, it was night, so I mean,
It's dark.
I guess.
So just go back really quick. $1 in 1976 would be $4.70 today. So it's
So like,
that's a
all right.
big
So
jump.
we're talking about $140 or so for the battery.
Yeah.
I guess that's about standard.
You're close. It's actually 150.19.
Okay.
So it's, I think it's
So, yeah.
it's right down the
150,
right where it
yeah.
should be.
Yeah, that seems
Yeah.
right.
I'm curious how much the tickets cost. Like, is it more than 32? Like,
Yeah, and apparently it's like they weren't. It doesn't seem like it was a sold out show, right? Because it was like a day or two out when Jackie randomly decides that she's going to come with them, so they were able to acquire a ticket
Yeah, they got
for her to
enough of
come,
them.
right? So do they not even buy him at that point? That she would have had a ticket to sit with him?
Isn't this dude working too? Like they just showed up. Like he's like
Well,
late
to-
night. He just
End
left.
of the
Ferg's-
shift, I guess,
To Ferg's
yeah.
point, though, maybe the gas station's going to close in 20 minutes. That show probably starts at 8 p.m. If they close at maybe 7:30, because you
I
see
thought
it later
this-
when he changes, so he must have gone home, changed.
This particular scene read a little weird to me, right? Because there's a couple of those things, right? We're like, why is this place open? Why can he leave? I don't know. It is what it is in the show, and you got to give a little bit of a sitcom liberty. But yeah, some of this stuff doesn't completely add up at this point, especially with the mechanic.
So basically, yeah, they say they have to trade the battery for 2 tickets, so we get into the argument of who's going to trade their tickets for their batteries, aka which one of these fans is not a diehard.
That's a battery joke, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a great battery
Good
joke.
for you. Good for you.
Yep.
You know, you're
Had to
not
explain it,
getting
'cause
a
I knew
laugh
no
out
one-
of me.
no
You already
one
got
picked
the
up on that
bowling laugh last
Yep.
week from me. You're not getting this one.
But
I'll
so
take
yeah,
one.
so
I'm fine with one.
they have to make the decision, and it seemed like obviously the first pick is Jackie, right? Because they didn't want Jackie to go in general. Like, so she's out, and then Kelso, guilty by association, you're going to lose out on your ticket too.
I actually wrote in my notes, why not Fez?
They like
they
Fez,
like him
man.
more.
You just
Yeah,
don't
but
try
like
to.
him more than Jackie.
They
Can't explain
dumped
it.
their lifelong friend for the foreign exchange student. They like
They're
just
mad
met.
that
But
Jackie's even with them though. Like,
I was
like,
gonna say,
He's
he's
taking
looking
the
at
wrath
Jackie's
of
there.
Jackie being there.
But if,
Yeah.
So
but if they hate
he's being
Jackie,
punished.
you would think that it would piss her off more to have him go on the show and leave her out than like it actually made her day.
Yeah, but they
I
don't
don't
want to
think
upset Fez.
I don't think that they're trying to be malicious to Jackie. I think that they're just trying to take the hint. By having Kelso come in, it would be much meaner.
Well, don't
I
they?
think.
They also establish at some point that Kelso has filled them in on the fact that he wants to break up with Jackie.
He
Right, we haven't talked
tried.
about
Yeah,
that
he
yet, but
did
that's a
bring
good
this up a
point.
couple times throughout the episode.
So
like,
I think that's their motive behind that. Is like, well, she shouldn't be here. We kind of don't like her. You want to break up with her, but for some reason she's still here, and it's because of you. So you got to deal with it. And like
and I
that's
think
how
they're
they
trying
work.
to push her, right? They're trying to push him to break up with her. So by you can't come to the concert now because you brought her is one of those like, see, if you just break up with her, this stuff won't happen to you in the future.
yeah, we can all
So
just be
it's
hanging
like,
out like we used to.
nudging,
Everything will be
nudging him in
fine.
that direction.
Your actions have consequences.
Right. So the decision's made, cuts to the concert, which, they didn't put a lot of production into the concert scene. They're in like, whatever, just they get some blinking
So the
lights
seats,
going on.
like,
And
yeah.
they're just kind of sitting in regular chairs. And, we hear some music in the background. And then they do a callback to the bathroom joke because now the mechanic and his creepy friend who looks just like him do the also like bathroom thing when they go together. So Fez is like, I thought guys don't go to the bathroom together. Now, I couldn't tell, and I'm just going to ask you guys, was this a drug joke or a gay joke?
Gay
Gay
joke.
joke.
Was it a
Because
gay joke?
later
Or-
on he says we're hanging out with gay people and we're okay with it. That's so cool.
Oh, I didn't even pick up on that joke.
Yeah,
I'm
they
like,
like make a joke.
It's
that
one or
they're
the
like-
other. I don't know if they're like about to do coke in the bathroom, and either way they don't want to explain it to feds. But okay.
Also, you could not do that joke now either. It's like, oh, because they're gay, they do women things. Like, this would not
Yeah,
work.
they wouldn't draw that direct parallel, I suppose. Now. if they
Yeah,
were
I
to-
think
to
the
do that
line
line
about
there.
like them being, I'm cool with this, and them being like, oh, it's old times, and they were cool with it would be one thing, but them making jokes about that, yeah, like the feminine side
Yep.
of things, yeah, you couldn't pull that off. That would be very, very much
Yep.
not.
Yeah, I
in
feel
line.
like if they were doing cocaine, you wouldn't use that feminine line.
No,
in
well,
there,
I felt like that joke could have played, but I guess it makes more sense now
Could've.
because that's why they're trying to mirror the scene where the girls were going before. So I guess that makes sense.
There's also where
Drug-
Fez tells
drugs
Kelso to
never
be
even
happy
crossed my
horror,
mind.
which is a great laugh too.
What
And
happened?
then
When Fez tells Kelso to be happy horror.
Oh.
from that point, we see Jackie and Kelso, like in the car, trying to have sex at the time, but they like not there yet. They can't quite like they're hooking up in the car at this point, but they can't get to that extra point. But then she kind of
Because
like
it's a Swiss Army belt.
yeah, and then they try to flip it, right? So she basically reverse psychology with them, right? So she says maybe we should break up. So even though he's been saying the whole episode, I want to break up with her, I want to break up with her. She says maybe we should break up, and he's like, no, I don't want to break up with you. So like the difference between when you're talking to your girl and you're talking to your friends, right? The inconsistencies of what you're going to tell either side to make them happy. And she had only
obviously
really
he's gauging this on a very physical response. He's right about to be in a physical act, and
right,
he's a
yeah.
17-year-old
This is all.
kid.
This is yeah.
Going
he's,
to the
he's
bone
got-
zone.
Yeah,
It's
he's
it's also more
boner brain.
demoralizing to be the one who was broken up with than to be
Yeah.
the one who broke up with. You know, it's so.
Sure, saving.
But I think
face.
it's more probably the physical aspect. He's totally boner brain right now. Like he's like, this is my opportunity to hook up in the car, and if I say yes, I want to break up with you, that's not going to happen.
If I'm
But
gonna miss
she
Todd
only,
Rundgren, I might as well.
yeah, she only tested him because she thought he wanted out. So when he said no, I don't want to break up, that's why she was like, oh, good, I didn't really want to break up either. It was just to make sure that everything was good. And then
Which is weird.
yeah.
It's a weird thing to do.
well, we're
right?
seeing the dynamic of their relationship, right? Like they have like they
It's
have
physical, yeah, I
a
guess.
somewhat toxic relationship that's just based on their physical attraction to one another, and you're seeing that throughout the episode. They made that very clear from the first time you really see them, right? So they argue a lot. She always just refers to him as Michael, where no one else calls him Michael, but that's kind of an old girlfriend thing, right? The full first name thing that I've brought it up before. Like the only people that ever call you by your full first name usually, like unless you are addressed that way to the world, is usually your girlfriend and like your parents are the only ones that will call you by your full first name.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Or yeah.
And that was about it for the concert scene. And then, it takes us to, and this was like the final scene of like the show. And we talked before about Donna and Eric's chemistry. And this is the first time I really felt like these two do have chemistry. They're
I
just
still
laying in the
didn't.
car. The concert's over. They're laying in the garage side by side, just kind of like looking up at the stars, listening to music. Listening to the artist they just went to see live, but I've done that, so I guess who's
Yeah, I
to
think
judge?
we're all guilty of that.
And
But,
true to
that
form.
was-
True to form.
That was definitely a time where I saw chemistry between those two. Did you guys pick up on that at this point? Did it feel
No.
like they should be together? No.
I think so.
there-
Yeah.
I got nothing from them.
There was points in the basement earlier in the show. They had arms around each other. They were sitting close. Like it was.
I
there
thought
was
that was
something
awkward.
there. There was something there.
Yeah, I got that they were flirty beforehand.
Yeah, so we talked about that earlier, and I was wrong. So that was the banging the head on the pole scene, like when their arms were around each other earlier. The show was telling you that they're supposed to be a couple eventually, but I didn't see chemistry between them. When they were sitting there with their arms around each other, at that point I'm like, why? That doesn't make sense because they haven't established that they like each other. So it's weird for them to just be sitting there with their arms around each other as buddies. That's not normal.
They do
Yeah, but
establish that. Sorry, Gordo. They do establish that they've been neighbors for a while, right? Or am I?
Yeah, they have like
misremembering
a
that?
history,
Because I think at one point she says you could have had me when you were 8.
like 4 or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where they shoehorned their, just comfortability around each
Yeah.
other.
But I thought this scene here was the first time for me that I'm like, this has legs. Like they do have some on-screen chemistry. They look like they could work together.
And they're on the hood of the car at this point too, right?
Yeah,
they're
just
laying
laying on the
there.
hood.
Which is
Yeah.
a pretty. I mean, and it's not intimate in a way that like being in a bed is intimate, but it's
Back then, I think it was. Not back
like,
then in
it's
the
a
70s. I
freedom
mean,
Nah, man,
symbol.
Wayne and
Yeah,
Garth
the car
did
is their
that.
freedom, and they're not going to be in bed together, but they're laying
Yeah.
in this sort
Yeah.
of thing.
They're having a nice moment, regardless. It's a nice moment between the two.
One thing I found funny though is when she got up to leave, he moves over into her spot for no reason at all. Because she's going to. There was no reason for him to move over, other than for her to walk back after and kiss him. Which
That's funny.
what
Yeah, I didn't
happens.
think of that. That's a good point, though.
And then so at that scene, we do get the first kiss between the two of them, and it did seem a little out of place. Like, I know they just had a nice moment, but it was like, I felt like something like this, that they were obviously teasing that this was going to lead to something. I thought they rushed it a little bit by having her kiss him at the end of this episode. I thought that they could have waited a while before that happened.
See, for this, I go on pilot rules, right? Where you have to make a 50-50 decision at this point. Do you want them to kiss because you want to see them progress, or do you want to have them not kiss because you want to see what happens? You have to flip a coin at that point, right?
You want to see what happens. That's what you do. That's what you need to do every time.
You got to make them want more. Yeah, you don't give them the finality because the reality is the pilot doesn't get aired if it's not picked up anyway. So it's just like the show dies in that single episode.
Yeah, but I like the idea of the chase is now more high stakes because they've already expressed this. It's not so much a does he, does she. It's a we both do, but they're awkward teenagers, and now we're gonna watch them try to navigate this. Which I guess
what I didn't like about it though is, well, again, I felt like it was too rushed. But on top of it, she also made it known that there will be a next time, because he said, well, if I could have did it differently, I would have moved my lips or whatever he said to her.
Right.
But she was like, you'll basically said there will be more opportunities for you to correct that. So I was just like, I thought it was too soon for the first kiss. And especially where it wasn't even almost like they kissed and then felt awkward about it and they weren't sure if they did the right thing. They kissed and she was like, yeah, we're going to keep kissing down the road. So
was it established that was the first kiss?
I don't think so.
I think this is a thing.
Outright stated.
No, because he says, why did you do that?
Yeah, I didn't get the vibe that they had kissed leading up until then.
Yeah, I don't know.
She was very embarrassed early in the episode when he heard from Kelso that she thought he was cute. So if they were already kissing, thinking that you're cute isn't really like, yeah, of course you do. You put your mouth on it on purpose.
I wonder though if they had kissed, but because they're maybe not in the lips, but maybe there was like peck on the cheeks and whatnot. But because you saw the way that they interacted down in the basement, you saw that they were awkwardly hands on. So I don't know. I got they were lifelong friends because they were neighbors and they grew up together. I didn't get any romance before this point from them.
I got a little in the basement, but this is the hardest, I think.
I don't know. I saw it, but maybe that's just the other episodes creeping in.
It was vague, right? Like we can't figure out down the line, and maybe that was intentional.
Yeah, and again, I think they could have waited, but that's the direction they went in, and I'm not the writer, so that's what they gave us. That was the show. Other than that, we just get one last little. It's almost like a second version of the intro where they're all back in the car doing another song, singing together, and like I thought that was kind of an interesting way to exit the show, is to kind of go full circle like that with an outro that's a pre-recorded outro, not just a scene. You don't see that in a lot of shows, but
I like the button of like doing the beginning and the end, but a little different.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It's different. It definitely flagged my attention because it's not something you're used to seeing. But that's it. That's the whole episode. That 70s show. This is the part of the show we're going to talk about it now. Like, how do you guys feel? Is this a show that based on just this episode and forgetting anything you know about the show other than just this pilot, is this a show that you want to greenlight or cancel? Joe, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, Kurtwood Smith, big star, done, greenlit.
Nick, how about you?
This show, my favorite thing about this pilot, anyways, it's fun. It's like a lot of fun, and I enjoyed the energy of it. And I'm definitely coming back. Greenlight. The characters are great. The story's great. I want to see more. Greenlight.
Gordo.
Greenlight. Everything about it was good. The characters were great. The story was good. Even the interaction with the parents were funny. I want to see where it goes. Green light for me.
Ferg, how about you?
Definitely green light. One thing I really like about the show is it's that 70s show, but that's not the identity of the show. Everything that happened in this show could have happened in any decade. And it wasn't for 70s jokes. It was just a sitcom that happened to be in the 70s. And everything worked, and that's why that 80s show failed. It's because the whole thing was, this is the 80s, and that wasn't a mistake that 70s show makes in its pilot. And for that, green light. Great characters, great jokes, everything.
Yeah.
How about you, Jay?
Yeah. So to go, with all you guys, I'm gonna give it the green light. And I'll be honest. So I've always liked that 70s show, but it's not a show that I can ever say I watched front to back. It was just one of those types of shows that's always on. It's heavily syndicated. I watched a good amount of it in its live run, but I can never say I really watched it episode to episode. Starting in the beginning now, and I don't know if this is just watching a little earlier, and as we talked about the episode, it's very nostalgic to all of us now to look back because it's relatable, right? Just the friendship aspect is very relatable. Starting in the beginning, this was definitely a show I wanted to maybe binge now, just really go through it. And, for that reason, and for everything else we talked about, weird transitions aside that I hated, I think the rest of the show hit, and I'm going to give that a green light. I think at some point we need to figure out what we're going to call episodes where we give them 5 green lights or 5 cancels. There needs to be some sort of a thing attached to that when we all agree one way or the other, but we don't have that yet. So maybe down the road. So
Find us on Twitter and tell us what we should call that.
Yeah. If you guys have a good idea, by all means, let us know. So guys, that's all we have for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. If this is a show that you want to continue to listen to, please subscribe to us so you don't miss an episode. You can find all our information at S1E1pod.com. That's going to link you to everywhere where you can listen, as far as Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever. And it has all of our social medias attached. So give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you prefer for your social media. We're everywhere. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye.
Hello,
Goodbye,
Wisconsin.